Today, I, Yasha Fatima, on behalf of Department of Chemistry, Isabella THOBURN College and Internal Quality Assurance Cell, take this opportunity to welcome you all to the third day of the International Conference on Applied Chemistry, Exploring Futuristic Applications for Sustainable Development. It is indeed such a delight to see so many faculties, working professionals, and students from across the world join us for this conference today. Chemistry plays a unique role in reaching sustainable development goals as it offers a broad spectrum of products and services essential to our daily lives that are safe, sustainable, and environmentally sound. That in turn enables more efficient use of our natural resources, increases energy efficiency, allows for reduced greenhouse gas emissions, finds new uses for current waste products, and is at the forefront of the development of sustainable materials. Advances in chemistry have been and will continue to be instrumental in meeting all of the sustainable development goals to varying degrees. After listening to our learned speakers from across the globe and successful completion of day 1 and day 2 of our conference, we surely got an insight that would help us take a step forward towards achieving the sustainable development goals. So without any further ado, we begin with part 2 of day 3 of our conference. But before we begin, I request all the participants to kindly turn off their mic. Now, we will start with a hymn sung by one of our undergraduate first-year student, Miss Ruth Prathna Charles. Thank you. Now, as per the tradition of our college, before starting any program, we invoke the presence of the Almighty and seek His blessings. I would like to request Miss Preeti to kindly lead us in prayer. Over to you, Preeti.
Let us close our eyes for a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for blessing us with a beautiful new day. Father, we thank you for blessing us with success in the past 2 days of the international conference, and we gather for the final day of the conference today. Father, today we pray for your blessings on us so that every speaker is able to make a correct and impactful delivery on their subject. Father, bless every person involved in conducting today's conference so that they may be able to perform their roles efficiently. And especially, Lord, we pray for the smooth technical functioning at every end. Lord, bless every participant of the conference that they may not only listen but understand and bring in practice the knowledge they gather from the conference. Thanking you for every blessing you have showered upon all of us and submitting everyone into your mighty hands. We ask this prayer in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you so much, Preeti, for such a meaningful prayer. May we be showered with choicest blessing of the Almighty and be blessed with abilities to achieve our goals while serving humanity. Beginning with the program, I would like to welcome and introduce Dr. V. Prakash, Principal, Isabella THOBURN College. Dr. Vinita Prakash has been the principal of Isabella THOBURN College since 2013. She has more than 30 years of teaching experience at undergraduate and postgraduate levels. She has qualified NET GRF and completed PhD from Department of Chemistry, Department of English, University of Lucknow. She has a good number of publications to her credit. Dr. Prakash is a voracious reader, an excellent orator, and an exceptional leader. I would now like to invite Dr. Vinita Prakash for welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Once again, I welcome all of you on the third day of this international webinar on applied chemistry, exploring futuristic application for sustaining development. And the thrust of this conference is to empower women, especially our students, for research. And I'm sure that these last 2 days have been a wonderful experience for each one of you. We have had panelists, keynote speakers, and chief guests from different parts of the world. And the sessions that I could attend have been really wonderful and very enriching. And the students' presentations also, I'm told, have been very good in the sense that they have kind of encouraged you to go deeper into research. And I'm sure that this last day, when you will be given your certificates and prizes will also be announced, it will be a source of motivation and encouragement to each one of you. I'm really happy that the Department of Chemistry at Isabella THOBURN College, along with the IQAC Internal Quality Assurance Cell, organized this virtual conference. And on behalf of the Isabella THOBURN College family, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our participants, both faculty and students from different parts of the world. And a very special welcome to our keynote speaker for the day, Professor Barbara Rothen-Rutshaw from Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Zurich, Switzerland. Ma'am, it is an honor and privilege for us that you have taken time out from your busy schedule and have joined us on this virtual platform. Otherwise, we would not get an opportunity to hear you or to meet you in person. But thanks to this technology, we are able to meet you like this and also get acquainted with the wonderful work and research that you are doing. And I'm sure that you are an inspiration and motivation to all our women students in India and in our college. So we are looking forward to hearing from you. We also have on the panel today esteemed speakers, keynote speakers, Dr. Sandeep Keshavan, who is a senior research fellow at UNIFER, Dr. Bedia from Washington University, Dr. Ruven Hay from Switzerland, Dr. Ashok Kirti from University of Manchester. So I really thank the Department of Chemistry and the convener of this conference, Dr. Alfred Lawrence and Dr. Seema Joshi, for having made this conference possible and for having brought in such distinguished panelists, scientists, and researchers on one platform to address, motivate, and encourage our students, particularly for research. So once again, thank you so much. My best wishes with each one of you. And I'm sure that the session that follows will be a wonderful experience for each one of you. Thank you so much. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your constant support, motivation, and for being pillar of strength in every task that we undertake. Moving further, with greatest honor and privilege, I take this opportunity to welcome and introduce our first keynote speaker for today, Dr. Barbara Rothen-Rittershauser. Dr. Barbara Rothen-Rittershauser received her PhD in 1996 in cell biology at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. She worked as a postdoc and group leader at ETHZ and University of Bern, Switzerland. She is an expert in the field of cell nanoparticle interactions with a particular focus on 3D human tissue models. Since 2011, she is the chair in Bionanomaterials at the Adolf Merkel Institute, University of Fribourg, Switzerland. The position is shared equally with Professor Alk Fink. Professor Rittershauser has published more than 300 peer-reviewed papers. She is an associate editor of Particle and Fiber Toxicology and currently president of the International Society of Aerosols in Medicines. We extend a warm welcome to you, ma'am, and invite you to deliver your talk. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks a lot for these very, very kind words and the invitation to present you some research experience, but I really would like also to tell you a little bit how I use my experience and my success to promote young researchers, not only female, also male researchers, and I think because I think this is also very important. I also would like to express my thanks to Professor Lawrence for his kind interactions and invitations and all the discussions we have about research, but also how we can advance young researchers and women to spark their interest for science. So you already very kindly introduced my curriculum very briefly. I just would like to briefly repeat, because it's also important to understand how I progressed in academia. So as you said, I did my first studies at the ETH, so the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, which is in Switzerland. And then I did my postdoc, my group leader position at the University of Bern, which is also in Switzerland. So it's another canton, but it's also in Switzerland. I then did my lecturer position also in Bern, and then I had an issue because I was never abroad. I was always staying in Switzerland, and this is here really an issue. So I spent some months in 2007 in Scotland at Napier University in Edinburgh. And this really helped me to also improve my experimental skills, but also my networking capabilities. And this was very important for my future career. So then for some years, it was not very clear in which direction I could go, because as you all know, the professor positions are very rare, also in Switzerland. I have applied also in other countries, but then I was very lucky to receive a professor position at the Adolf Merkel Institute in Fribourg, which is also a canton in Switzerland. So I really could stay in Switzerland with a great position. Why did I focus so much on Switzerland? Yeah, you see here the reasons. My two sons, one was born in 96 and one in 2001. And then it's always, if you have a family, you always need to consider that everybody's feeling well. You need to consider about the schools where they go, my husband who has a position. And this was always very important to find some solutions which were acceptable for the whole family. I could reduce, thanks to my great mentors at this time, I could reduce my workload to 50 and 70%. So I had some time left, which I could spend with my family. At very different positions during my life, I always had to ask myself, yeah, do I stay in research? Do I go to industry? What is my plan A, B, or C? And this, I think you have to ask yourself regularly. And what I really think is important is that we should really try to be independent as a woman, but we also need, of course, to consider all the requirements for a lucky family life, which is also important. So this is sometimes a very big hurdle we have to face. And then, of course, we also need to question ourselves: do I go to research or do I move to industry? And just to give you some numbers, in Switzerland, about 90% of the PhDs go to industry. So there are not a lot of positions in academia, but you know this. So only a minority of people stay at the university. Maybe something else which I would like to share with you is a rather unexpected solution for my personal life. And I applied together with my colleague, Professor Alke Fink, whom you see on this picture, together in a job sharing model for a full professor position here at the University of Fribourg. So this means that we really share the responsibilities. So we share a leading position. Our advantage is that we have complementary educations. My colleague is a material engineer by training, and as you heard, I'm a cell biologist. And this was, for us, one of the reasons was to have this work-life balance. So we both have a family, so we still can spend time with the children, which, by the way, have now grown up. And it is also important to have sympathy and respect for the other colleague. And the University of Fribourg was very open to this solution. And this just should also show you that sometimes you have to think out of the box, think about solutions with which you can combine your research and also your family expectations. Very, very briefly about our research that we are doing here in Fribourg. So my colleague, as I told you, is a material engineer by training, and she's designing and developing a variety of different nanoparticles. Focus is on inorganic materials like gold, silver nanoparticles, which can be used for very different applications. And our focus is really to investigate the interaction of these nanosystems with cells at the single cell level. So which response, which effect do the particles have? How can we use them in an advantage way for biomedical applications, and what is the possible hazardous effects of particles in different tissue systems. So this means we do very fundamental research, so these nanomaterial cell interactions. We do hazard assessment, and we also have some novel technologies to improve our cell cultures, for instance, by bioprinting approaches. And I just very quickly show you my strength, which is in lung research. And I'm working since many, many years with lung cell models, which can be used as an alternative method to test nanoparticles which can be inhaled. And this development really, you see here this very early publication in 2005. This was really the key for success in my case. So this is a co-culture with epithelial cells and immune cells, which are really important for the defense system in our lungs. And you see here some live cell imaging of macrophages, which are labeled here in green, which scroll on the surface of the epithelium, which is labeled here in red. And we use this system for a variety of different applications. For instance, to test inhalation of engineered nanoparticles, but we are also very active to test or to investigate the effects of air pollution, or more specifically, combustion-derived nanoparticles like from diesel or gasoline cars. And actually, this research was also the reason why I met Professor Lawrence, because we met us at the international conference about combustion-derived nanoparticles in Zurich several times, and there we started the discussions. So briefly, we use here a car which is placed on a dynamometer, and then now it didn't work. Please apologize. I hope now it works. So this car is on a dynamometer, and the gasoline or the diesel exhaust is directed here into this blue box, and in this blue box we place the cell cultures that I just introduced to you. They are kept at 37 degrees, very high humidity, and finally the cells are exposed to the exhaust, and then we can measure the effects and correlate it with the different cars, with the different filter systems. We also did it for air pollution, so we just exposed the cells to air here in Fribourg, and then we could measure the effects. So based on all the experience I had with my personal career, how to combine family with the work, I have been asked to become the delegate for the promotion of young researchers in a national center of competence in research in Fribourg, but here we also connect other universities or the federal institutes in Switzerland. And for me, so we started this program 7 years ago, and for me really the motivation to support this equal opportunity program was to show that our aim is not that men and women are the same, become the same. This is never possible, but that our opportunities in academia become and remain equal. And I think this is also an important statement here at the bottom. I'm a mother, but I can still do serious research, because men, if they have children, they are usually not asked about how they do research and can combine it with family life. And I think we already changed a lot, but we still need more in this direction. So what are we doing in this equal opportunity program? So we start really at the undergraduate level, high school level. We go and we show what we can do in research to spark the interest of female students in natural and life science. here in Fribourg, we try to create a culture which allows these equal career opportunities for parents. And I think it's also important for men who have family that they can profit from these conditions. Then we really support young female researchers. We talk with them, we mentor them, and we show them how it is possible to stay in academia. We try to actively support the employment of women up to the professional level. And then, of course, maybe the last point here is, apologize, switch off my phone. We need to show how we can disseminate successful measures and promote also the implementation at other units of the university. Please do not have any illusions. You have to be the best. You have to work hard to be successful, and this is true for independent if you are a female or a male researcher. And this is, of course, especially important the higher you get, because the positions at the postdoc, group leader, or professor level are really minor. We have very few positions available only, so that the competition is really high. What do you need to be successful? Of course, you need an excellent research, maybe also which is different to what others do. You need to find your niche. So you need a good publication record, which also have a high impact for others. You need to supervise students. This is a very important skill. You need to attract external funding. You need these leadership management skills, presentation skills, and you need to network. This is a point which is usually not communicated a lot, but this networking is important. So if I receive applications for a position, and if this person tells me, oh, I have met you at this conference, or I have read your papers, then I'm interested to see the application. But if it's an unpersonal application or motivation letter, then yeah, it's maybe less interesting also for me to read. And I'm aware that this networking is very difficult. So for me, it was maybe easier than for you to travel around the world. I was in Australia, I was in the US, I was, as you said, in Scotland. And I could really increase my social networking, of course, also my professional networking, not only private networking, but the professional networking is really, really important. And as I said, I'm aware that this is also dependent on the culture, on the country where you work and live. But I think I briefly checked a little bit the opportunities you have in India. I found this very interesting article, which is already 15 years old. And I think it's very interesting to read and also to see which progress you made in the previous 15 years. And here is a more recent example about these networks that you started to build. And this is really important because this is something where you can ask for mentorship, you can ask for specific support, and this will improve your career perspectives. And what we are doing today, this is what you also said with the Zoom and online meetings, this is exactly the way we all have to go, including myself. So to conclude, so you are the driving force. You have to be interested in what you are doing, independent if you stay in academia or if you go in industry. And it's really important to have the support from your partner, from your family, from the children. They have to understand that you have to work hard and to support your career plans. I really encourage you to collaborate. This is also what Professor Lawrence is trying to start with this workshop today, or during the previous days, because this will increase your publication number and also the impact of what you are publishing. I think in academia, mobility is important, and if you have the opportunity to go to another university in your country, or if you can even go abroad, this will really improve your compatibility in comparison to others. Use the promotion for women's positions, and I briefly scrolled or screened in the internet yesterday. I mean, this is a deadline for application, which is today, so maybe this is a little bit last minute, but go out and try to find some positions or fellowships announced only for women, because then, I mean, competition is still high, but maybe you are not competing with a man who does not have a family and has maybe other opportunities for his career. So really search for these opportunities. I don't know if in India it is possible to work part-time or to have these job sharing possibilities. I just give you this idea. Maybe you can discuss it then also with your mentors. So this brings me now to the final point, which is the mentor. Search for a positive and enthusiastic mentor. And this can be male and female. During my career path, I only had male mentors, and they were really fantastic and supporting me and also understanding sometimes the difficulties I had. So if the kids were sick or then of course I had to stay home, and we had to find other solutions. Build trust with your mentor, listen, and also give feedback to them. Because for me, it's very important if I give some advice to younger students to see if they respect my advices and how they reacted, and if they also try to implement this feedback on their daily life. Be honest. And usually these mentor discussions are confidential, so this means you can really be honest and tell about your problems that you have. I try to really encourage the independence of my mentees because they will have to go out once. They cannot stay in my lab forever. And with this, I also need to support them to develop their professional and soft skills. If you have others, what I can do, how I can improve, please let me know. So to conclude, it's really important to include in all these discussions not only female participants, but also male students, postdocs, because they have maybe very similar problems than we have, and make them also sensitive for gender issues. It's not only a woman problem, but it's also a man problem. What we sometimes face is that we do not have enough applications from female candidates for some of the maybe more senior positions, and it is really our responsibility to actively search for talented female candidates, which we can then ask to or invite for an interview. So improve the women's network. This is what you are doing. And what I also observed is that women do not trust in their skills. So we just need to become more self-confident, and then we can do it. This is why we are here. This is why we share with you our experience, and please trust in yourself, be more self-confident. And with this, I wish you a very nice continuation of this workshop. If I can support some of you also for internship in my lab, I'm very happy to do it. That's it. Thank you. Thank you for attention, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable time and profound information. It was a pleasure listening to you and to your vision.
Thank you.
That was indeed very motivative talk. So now the floor is open for the question answer session. Participants are requested to raise their hands to get themselves unmuted. We have a first question from Sneha Tripathi.
Sneha Tripathi, can you hear us?
Yes, now we can hear you. No. Now I cannot hear you anymore. You can also ask the question in the chat, if this is possible. Or you can ask questions also later. No problem at all.
Yes, Professor Barbara, I think so, like there's some technical glitches. So probably, they will ask the question. And anyways, thank you so much. You are always there for us, especially, when it comes to empowering the women. Thank you so much for your precious time. I'm greatly appreciated. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. So, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Reham, you can go ahead.
I would now hand over to Yasha Fatima. Over to you.
Moving further, I would now like to welcome and introduce our third keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Sandeep Keshavan, who is currently working as a senior researcher at UNIFR Adolph Merkel Institute Bio-Nanomaterials Group and has done his postdoctoral research from Karolinska Institute in the Division of Molecular Toxicology, Institute of Environmental Medicine. Sir has also been a research fellow at Istituto Italiano di Tecnologia in Nanomaterials for Biomedicals and project associate at Center for Nanoscience and Engineering at Indian Institute of Science, ISC Bangalore. Dr. Sandeep Keshavan has completed his doctoral studies, that is PhD in nanosciences. We extend a warm welcome to you, sir, and look forward to your deliberations. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Great, thank you very much. I can share the screen right now. That is okay.
Yes, sir, we can see your slides.
Great. Thank you very much. So today I'm here to talk about my scientific journey. So as you all have already would have understood, basically I'm born and raised in India. To be specific, I'm southern part of India. So where I have completed my bachelor's and master's in biotechnology. And now presently, after which, so just a brief introduction about myself. So first step of research was I carried out as a project associate in ISC Bangalore at Center for Nanoscience and Engineering. That's where I have worked for almost 3 years in Center for Nanoscience and Engineering on carbon-based biosensors. And then I received a fellowship for my PhD in IIT Genova in Italy, where I worked on cell-to-cell interaction on graphene-based materials. And after that, I moved for my first postdoc researching at Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden, where it was very specific to work on different immune cells on various nanobiomaterials. And presently, I'm working here in Adolph Merkel Institute with advanced 2D models for different nanobiomaterials as such. So just to move on, before going on to the actual research, I would just like to give you a brief introduction about nanomaterials. As you've already heard about different nanomaterials, they are they're of like different varying dimensions and used for different applications. And here they also interact with different biomolecular interfaces. Due to this interaction, they have been exploited and different biomedical applications such as drug delivery, tissue engineering, like due to their various size and high surface to volume ratio properties. Although they have been used in different biomedical applications, there are like several disadvantages and fundamental challenges that hamper nanomaterial deployment to the clinic due to their stability and biocompatibility. To overcome this, I mean, over the past years, I have like worked on different nanomaterials. So here, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what I have done during my PhD. That was the research activity at IIT Geneva. So here, it was mainly on single layer graphene. And the single layer graphene, which is like basically carbon atoms, which are like tightly bound in hexagonal honeycomb lattice, and which can be transferred onto any substrate of interest. For instance, here we did on the glass substrate, and then we did a laser patterning. On the right-hand side, you actually can see some of the significant Raman characterization results of the single layer graphene, and after it was ablated using the laser patterning. In order to improve the adhesion on the left-hand corner, you can see that we have coated all the three substrates like with polylysin, on that is like the glass cover slip, single layer graphene, and a micropattern single layer graphene. And when we seeded the neurons, and we saw that the neuronal cells preferentially adhered on the single layer graphene. So on the right-hand side, the corner images where we can see some scanning electron microscopy, which shows that these cells have been viable and they are attracted by the graphene substrates. So this was one of my PhD research activity that I completed. And after that, I moved to Karolinska Institute for my first postdoc, where I worked on different nanobiomaterials for different endpoints, and from which I'm just going to give you one of the examples where using multi-wall carbon nanotubes. And in the multi-wall carbon nanotubes, they have like different physiochemical properties, as you can see, NM400, NM401, NM402, where you can see they are more like long, NM401 is more long and rigid like structures, whereas the other two more like spindle-like structures here. And so when we tested on two different cell models, one is the neutrophil model, which are like the first cell types that are recruited during the inflammation. And what we see here is like the differentiated cell line, and also in the primary cells, we did not see any toxicity in both the cell lines, as you can see on the left-hand side, using an LDH assay. And this one on the right-hand corner, you can also see there is like, although there is like uptake of these nanomaterials, we did not see any toxicity as such. And further moving on, we did some studies on the macrophage model. And in the macrophage model, we saw that NM400 and NM402, which was more spindle-like structures, did not show any toxicity, whereas the NM401, which was long, rigid-like structures, actually killed the cells. And further, we tried to understand the mechanism. Further, we tried to understand the mechanism behind this, and then which was recently published in Nanotoxicology, probably for further reading. Maybe you can understand in this particular manuscript that was published. And moving on, so this is some of the ongoing research at Adolf Merkel Institute, where I recently joined as a postdoc here, and where we are working on different lung cell models. And Barbara has already given a very nice introduction about the different cell models that we have used. And also my colleagues will also be giving in the further talks about this one. So here, what I would like to see here is the importance of 3D liquid interface cultures and more cell relevant results. And what we are trying to do here is we're trying to optimize lung on bioreactor that mimics the following central aspects. Sorry. For this, what we are trying to do is we have electrospun membranes, and we have an alveoli, and that could be probably stretched. So this is the overall setup that we have showing here. And then we did some cell viability assays. And what we see here is in 3 different conditions: submerged, DALI, and no breathing conditions. We do not see any toxicity. And we also stained it with F-actin. Was visualized with rhodium and phalloidin. And we formed a uniform monolayer. So some closing thoughts about this. So like I mentioned, I have previously done a pre-doctoral research fellow and the doctoral research fellow at India, and then followed it with IT in Genova. And then my first postdoc was done at Karolinska, and then I would call it as a specialization phase, where I'm doing my senior research fellow at Adolf Merkel Institute, and the next will be as a group leader or a research professorship. Finally, I would like to acknowledge all my mentors and from IIT, Karolinska, and also Adolf Merkel Institute, and also the organizers at ISABELLA THOBURN College. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. And that was very brief but very informative. Thank you so much. One question on behalf of our students I want to ask, so can you tell me what all things, what are qualifications they have to apply for a PhD in Switzerland or in European institutes?
Yeah, it's a very nice question, because just before joining as my PhD at IIT Genova, what I would say is I had a very good research experience at ISC, and that was my first stepping stone, in terms of entering into any research activity, because that's where you, like Barbara mentioned, that's where you have good networking with the people, and when they're inviting people for the conferences or anything, you have an opportunity to meet different professors from all over the world, and then you get to talk to them, as Barbara mentioned, you need to give some inputs before writing them an email about all these things. And then they would definitely encourage to apply for a fellowship, or also if they have any open positions in their lab, they usually encourage people to apply for it.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. Now, Reham, you can go ahead. Yes.
Can I maybe briefly add to this?
Yes, Professor Barbara, please.
I think what is very important is that you do not broaden your expertise too much at the qualification stage. So if I announce a PhD position, I really need, for instance, a chemical background or a biological background, but it should not be too mixed or too interdisciplinary, because then you miss the depth of the topic. So focus on chemistry or focus on biology, but don't increase your CV too much.
Okay, thank you. Shrishti Dwivedi, you have raised your hand. So if you want
we have one question from Shrishti Dwivedi.
Yes, sorry, sir, for the technical glitch I had at that point of time. My question is to Ma'am Barbara. Ma'am, am I audible to you?
Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, my question is to you. Can you please suggest me some of the institutes or places in Switzerland where I can think of doing my postdoc research or any research related to air quality assessment and toxicology?
There are not so many in Switzerland, but if you send me your CV and your interest, I can try to make some connections. Yes.
Sure.
Maybe you also make a search, an international search, and put in some of the keywords. So what you just said, air pollution, toxicology, and postdoc, and this should already give you some potential positions.
Yes, wonderful.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Reham?
Yes, sir. Do we have more questions?
If
you are unable to unmute yourselves, you can just put your questions in the chat box.
Okay. So one more question from Sandeep, if you you have your collaborators from India, I think so.
Right.
You did your your PhD from IIT, I think so, and then you move to Indian Institute of Science.
Yes.
Yes. So if for doing masters here, you must be familiar with the students here. If a person is doing her PhD or his PhD or masters from a regional institute like ours, people don't think that they have done a lot of work. Whereas a person, if he or she is doing her PhD or masters from IIT or Indian Institute of Science, then only people consider. So is it true, or please tell me something about that?
The
brand name should be there.
Sorry, please go ahead.
The brand name should be there, I'm talking about.
Not necessary. It's all about the self-confidence. Again, one important thing is what kind of research activity are you showing? And if you are able to show good research activity and good publications in terms of your CV, I think where you're coming from really does not matter. For instance, when I started my bachelor's or master's, I did not come from IITs. So I did my bachelor's in VIT and then masters in VIT. The good thing is how you choose your project. For instance, I did my master's project in Atomic Research Center in Kalpakkam. That was one of the success where I got into the nanoscience and biosensor technology. And that gave me a first step as a fundamental step to move towards IAC. And it's all about writing to the professors and how interested and motivated you are in the research activity where the professor is doing. It's not about writing a very general overview of their research activity. You need to be very specific when you're writing to the professors.
Good, very good. And one question from Barbara. This is if you are here, if you can hear me, Professor Barbara.
Yes, I can hear you.
If a student is doing PhD from our institute, let it be. So how many impact factor or H index she should have, so that professors in European countries may see her resume or see her details?
At this stage, if you apply for a postdoc position, I do not look at the number of paper at the H index, and this is actually not allowed anymore in Switzerland because we should more look into the general application. So, but what I look at is that you have first author papers, because it's important that you show me that you can summarize your research and you can publish in an international recognized journal. And usually our students have 1 or 2 first author papers from their PhD. And then of course for leading positions, you have to increase this number.
Okay.
But for a postdoc, a first year postdoc, I just see, have a look at the more general education.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yesha, please go ahead now.
Sir, over to Sana. Sana, please introduce the next speaker.
Moving further, I would like to welcome and introduce our next keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Bedia Begum Karakochak. She has done her PhD in Energy, Environmental and Chemical Engineering, School of Engineering and Applied Science from Washington University in St. Louis. She has also done her PhD training in Ophthalmology, Department of Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences, School of Medicine, Washington University in St. Louis. Her research interests include impedance spectroscopy for studying cell function and survival. She is a senior scientist in developing and assessing complex 3D retinal, lung, and intestine cell culture models as a tool for toxicological drug and particle screening using impedance spectroscopy at University of Fribourg, Adolf Merkel Institute, Fribourg. And she has received Swiss Government Excellence Postdoctoral Scholar in Developing Engineered Cold Nanoparticles for Targeted Drug Delivery Applications. We extend a warm welcome to you, ma'am, and look forward to your deliberations. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for the very nice introduction. So I will try to share my screen if I can. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see. Thank you.
Okay. Right. So let's, okay. So I would like to give a very brief research overview. My name is Bedia Begum Karakochak. I'm a senior scientist at the Biomedical Group at Adolf Merkel Institute at University of Fribourg. So just to give you a brief snapshot of where I came from and where I would like to go in the future. So originally I'm from Istanbul, Turkey. I did my bachelor's degree in environmental engineering. Then I went to Boğaziçi University, which is also a very good university in Istanbul, to do my first master's degree. Here we had a collaboration with the Washington University in St. Louis in the United States, where the focus was using nanotechnology. So I would like to mention that this whole research was funded by the Turkish government, including my salary and the research activities. So after completing this collaboration with WashU, I decided to do my PhD at this university. First, I did my master's degree specializing in chemical engineering. Then I did my PhD, again, specializing in chemical engineering with the Cecil and Bertha Winningham Luhing Scholarship. Then we had a second collaboration, but this time within the school of WashU with the medical school, where I had to go through a rigorous training at ophthalmology and visual sciences at School of Medicine. Then after completing my PhD at Energy, Environmental and Chemical Engineering, I did a one-year postdoc at the medical school. Then I decided to apply for the Swiss Government Excellence Postdoctoral Fellowship. And I reached out to Barbara Rotten for her to be my host advisor, and she kindly accepted it and became my host. And after completing my Swiss Government Excellence Scholarship, where I developed nano agents for lung cancer, we have applied for a project which was funded by the Swiss Innovation Agency, InnoSwiss, where our goal is to develop smart inserts to be able to measure impedance to track cells in complex co-culture models. So I'm not going to present too many technical details, but rather I want to give brief summaries of some selected projects during which I did, during which my PhD studies and also during my postdoctoral studies. So this first project, during this first project, I synthesized gold nanoparticles, and the goal was to engineer them so that we can actually use them for targeted drug delivery and imaging applications. So I used the natural biopolymer hyaluronic acid and I antihylated this hyaluronic acid so that it could go and stick to the gold surface. So the goal was to create this nanoparticle, which is biocompatible, and also we want this nanoparticle to target specific cells in the body, such as disease cells or cancer cells. So this hyaluronic acid, which is a natural biopolymer, is recognized by CD44 receptors. These CD44 receptors are overexpressed in diseased and cancer cells. And when we looked at their internalization, we saw that with this coating, in fact, the internalization rate was enhanced greatly and they were biocompatible. So next, I developed red emissive carbon quantum dots to be used in bioimaging, especially for ophthalmic applications. So synthesizing carbon quantum dots is fairly easy. It is very straightforward, but our goal was to create red emissive carbon quantum dots so that the light could actually penetrate deep in the skin and excite these nanoparticles for bioimaging applications. So we had 3 parameters at 5 different levels, which means we had to do 125 experiments. But instead of doing that, which is not possible, obviously, we used a design of experiment approach, which is a very common approach used in chemical engineering. It is called central composite design response surface methodology. So by using this methodological approach, I was able to significantly reduce the number of experiments I had to do to optimize this synthesis method. So at the end, we were able to synthesize carbon quantum dots, which were red emissive. The product yield was several grams per batch, and the quantum yield was almost 15%, which is an acceptable quantum yield efficiency for these types of applications. So next, as I mentioned, I have applied for the Swiss Government Excellence Scholarship. And what I proposed was that using the nanoparticles that I developed during my PhD studies, gold nanoparticles, I wanted to load doxorubicin, a chemotherapy drug, and then see the fate of this nanoparticle with the drug loaded on it. For that, I have used the 3D cell culture model, which was developed by Professor Rothen, as she mentioned during her talk. So what we have observed is that, so with the coating, it is able to enter the cancer cells selectively, but the fate inside the cell is rather changing because of the presence of the polymer around the gold nanoparticle. So this work is still under preparation. We will hopefully publish it soon. And last but not least, we have this collaborative project with a startup company here in Switzerland, Simply Next SA, and we are also collaborating with Swiss Innovation Park in BL to develop these smart inserts to be able to test functional complex cell culture models. So right now, what we are working on is that we want to track the movement, the proliferation of the cells in a complex co-culture model. So right now, the technology is allowing us to do this in 2D, which means you can only track the monolayer of cells. But with the technology that we are currently working on, we would be able to measure the cell capacitance, resistance, and the impedance of the cells in an insert setting for the very first time in the entire world. So we are very excited about this work. The project will be concluded hopefully next year. And with that, I would like to acknowledge all my previous mentors and my current mentors, obviously, and my colleagues throughout my PhD studies and my postdoctoral studies. What I would like to do here is that I would like to draw your kind attention to the list of the mentors. So until coming to Switzerland, I actually never had a female mentor. All my mentors, all my past mentors were male. So for the first time, I got a chance to work with female mentors, Professor Barbara Rosen and Professor Alke Fink. So I'm incredibly grateful and thankful for that. And I would like to also acknowledge my previous colleagues from both BASU and also from here, Adolf Merkel Institute at University of Freiburg. And last but not least, of course, the funding agencies. All of these projects were funded. So I was always I was lucky and thankful and grateful enough to secure my own funding for both of my PhD studies and postdoctoral studies. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to send me an email at bedia.karakocak@uniafr.ch. And if there are any questions or comments, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Wonderful presentation, ma'am. I'm Dr. Imran from Department of Chemistry, Isabella THOBURN College. Ma'am, you talked about the quantum dots and the carbon dots and the nanoparticles, gold nanoparticles. And you talked about the hyaluronic acid. Naturally, it is present in the epithelial tissue. So how imaging was done using gold nanoparticle, and on the other hand, what mechanism by which quantum or carbon dots interact with the hyaluronic acid?
So the question is, how does hyaluronic acid attach to gold nanoparticles? Is that the question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So,
either it's synthetically outside from the outside the body, or you just give the gold nanoparticle to the body where they get attached to the hyaluronic acid and produce that.
No, synthetically first we have bare gold nanoparticles uncoated. Then I have the hyaluronic acid. So what I mentioned in my slides was that I introduced this end thiolization method. So at the end of the polymer group, you have a free thiol group. So the gold surface is highly electronegative, and attracted to this thiol group. Therefore, with that end-thiolated HA, the gold nanoparticle forms a covalent bond. So that's how you basically coat the gold nanoparticle with the HA. And then you test it on the cells, and you also could test it on with animals too.
Thank you. I think so. Yeshap,
one more thing I would like to ask. Since hyaluronic acid is an anionic type of thing, anionic thiol group is there.
Yes,
so
and
we use the cationic nanoparticle. So we can we use other than gold nanoparticle which are cationic in nature with the same binding affinity? Can we use?
You could, but you need an electronegative surface. If you have an electronegative surface, then sure, you can use the thiol group to be attached on that surface. But gold, specifically by nature, is attracted to thiol. That's why we chose gold. And also, it has this surface resonance effect because of the highly dense electron cloud around the gold nanoparticle. So it's basically allowing us to excite, like shoot a laser at a certain wavelength, and then it resonates and creates the signal so that we can actually track the gold nanoparticles inside the cells. Because HA is invisible, there's no fluorescent tag, but with the gold nanoparticle, we can actually track them inside the cell. That's why we use gold here. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, it was a very informative presentation, so thank you for that. I'm Yasha Fatima. I'm currently pursuing my master's in chemistry from IT College, Isabella THOBURN College, and I wish to apply for PhD abroad. So, ma'am, my question to you is that what can I currently do in my master's that will give me an edge over others and will pave the door and pave the way and open doors for new opportunities and will make my PhD journey easy to apply for PhD abroad? So, ma'am, can you please elaborate and tell me about that?
So first of all, open communication is very important. You need to communicate openly what you would like to do as a part of your PhD thesis. So it should be your decision first. So for example, if you want to focus on nanotechnology, you should focus on nanotechnology related projects as a part of your master's thesis. And then the next step is, where would you like to apply to US, to which country? Because there are country-specific, university-specific application procedures. And for the United States, it's very competitive, as you can imagine, and they require certain tests to be taken. So for example, TOEFL, English proficiency, GRE, and also you need to have a very high GPA on the top of that. So with these three, and also with your research background, you apply to universities in the US, and then you go through a rigorous selection program. But again, it depends on the country that you're applying to. So this was for the US, since I did my PhD in the US, this was the case. But for European countries, the requirements could be different. So I would suggest you, if you have a country in mind, go to their university profiles and check if there are any specific requirements for applications. But in terms of research, it's important to focus on the topics that you really want to explore further in your PhD thesis.
All right, ma'am. And ma'am, also having a research experience will be beneficial or not? Ma'am, obviously it will be beneficial.
Definitely, definitely.
Is it a necessity or?
In where, sorry?
Ma'am, having a research experience to apply abroad, is it a necessity for some months?
Yes, for my university, for example, it was a necessity, even though, even if you're applying directly from your bachelor's, after your bachelor's degree, they are still looking for research experience. This was one of the criteria, of course, but if you have a master's degree, obviously you will have a research experience. But even if you're applying directly from after your bachelor's degree, they do look at your research experience.
All right, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for enriching our knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am,
yes, so like, is there any other question?
Yes, sir. I want to ask a question. So can I?
There is some disturbance that is going on.
There's some background noise, but I can hear.
Yes, go ahead, speak. Pratiksha, Pratiksha, you want to ask? Is it Pratiksha?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Ma'am, this is Priya Tripathi. I'm pursuing a master's in biotechnology. I'm in second year from Isabella College. Ma'am, I want to ask which country can be the best or the better option for biotechnology, research in biotechnology field, and what's the exact time, what's the proper time, exact time when I can apply for the procedure, admission procedures, or does it vary from country to country?
It does vary from country to country. That's why I suggested to look for the university profiles, the web pages. These specific time frames are announced usually a couple months in advance minimum. So for example, for Washington University, the application period was from November to February, if I'm not mistaken, and the results were announced in early May. That means you need to start preparing from summer if you have to take the exams that are required, etc. So there's like a 6-month, I would say, preparation period for the universities in the US. But again, if you want to apply for a specific university in the United States, you need to go to their website and see what their deadlines are, because it will vary depending on the university. And for the biotechnology field, it's hard to comment and speculate. It would be a speculation at this point. What I would suggest is that I would do a research. I would do a paper research in any of the networks that you're using, for example, in Google Scholar, the top groups I would look for, the top groups, like, for example, if you're interested in gold nanoparticle synthesis, what are the top groups that are known for gold nanoparticle synthesis? This would be your starting point, and then you could go from there. So publications are very important. So
thank you so very much, ma'am. Thank you. Have a good day, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an in-depth interaction with our participants and delightful presentation that genuinely enriches our knowledge about different aspects of the wonder gold nanoparticles. Now, I would like to hand over the floor to Ms. Yashab. Over to you, Yashab.
Moving further, I would now like to welcome and introduce our next speaker for the day, Dr. Ruben He. Sir has completed his postdoc in bio-nanomaterials from Adolf Merkel Institute in Switzerland and has done his PhD in toxicology from Utrecht University, the Netherlands. His research interests include inhalation toxicity, development of in vitro models, human risk assessment. His experimental skill includes cell culture, ALI exposure of in vitro models, fluorescence microscopy, ambient particle sampling, and chemical analysis. We extend a warm welcome to you, sir, and invite you to deliver your talk. Thank you so much.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. So first I will share my screen. Okay. So thanks for the introduction, and also thanks for having me here to talk about my research and also the research experience. So first, I would like to introduce myself. My name is He Ruiwen. I'm from China. And you can see here is my email address. If you are interested in my work and also want to have a further discussion, feel free to send me the email. And here, I will briefly introduce my research experience. So from 2009 to 2016, I got my bachelor and master in environmental science in China. And after my master, I decided to stay in the academic research area and the research in the future. So with the help of the Chinese scholarship, I pursue my PhD in the toxicology in Utrecht University in the Netherlands. And last month, I finished my PhD thesis defense. And the title of my thesis is Air Liquid Interface Exposure of In Vitro Lung Model, Improvement and Application to Study Inhalation Toxicity of Aircraft-Related Air Pollutants. And from this year, I start working in our current group as a postdoctor in Switzerland and supervised by Professor Barbara. So today I would like to talk about the air liquid interface exposure of lung cell models for testing inhalation toxicity. So as we know, humans are consistently exposed to various substances every day, ranging from industrial gases, nanoparticles, traffic emissions, to cigarette smoke. And these exposures are related to various adverse effects, including chronic lung disease, such as asthma and COPD. And also some small particles can cross the lung-blood barrier and enter into our bloodstream, and finally diffusion in our whole body, including the brain area. So it may also cause the neurotoxicity. Then it's of significance for us to study the inhalation exposure. But how? So normally there are two methods, by epidemiology or by toxicology. So today I would like to introduce the toxicology way. So toxicology study is traditionally based on in vivo exposure experiments, such as animal tests. But as we know, due to the high cost, the ethical issues, and also interspecies differences in vivo experiments, there is an increasing request to use in vitro cell models for exposure experiments. So before talking about the cell exposure, let me briefly introduce the cell culture. So normally, we cultured the cells in such specific cell culture dish with covered medium, which also called the submerged cell culture. So based on this submerged cell culture, we can perform the submerged exposure. Let's use the particle exposure as an example. So under the submerged exposure to particles, the cells are cultured under submerged conditions, and the particle suspension can directly add it into the medium for cell exposure. Although this method is easy to perform, but as shown in this flash, it has some limitations. For example, the characteristics of the particles may be changed by the medium during the exposure. And also, there are some particles floating in this medium, which make the actual deposit mass of particles remain unknown. And in general, this exposure method is not suitable for the exposure to gases and aerosols. So due to this, we need to do the improvement. Therefore, the air-liquid interface culture and exposure were developed. So if we want to perform the Ali culture, we need to use this specific culture insert, which is fitted to this cell culture plate. So during the Ali culture, the cells are cultured onto the membrane of these inserts without covered medium. And the medium was added into the basolateral side to provide the nutrition. And this setup can stimulate the cell differentiation and also mimic the airway conditions. So here is an overview of the Ali culture protocol. So first, we will do the cell seeding in these inserts. And the cells are cultured under submerged conditions for several days to reach the confluence. So once the cells are confluent, we will remove the apical side medium and to acquire the Ali conditions. Then the cells start to be cultured under Ali conditions. So based on this Ali culture, the Ali exposure can be performed. So the Ali exposure can be used for not only the particle exposure, but also for the gas and aerosol exposure. Here, let's also use the particle exposure as an example. So also from this flash, we can see this particle exposure is a real-time exposure. And there is no loss during the exposure, and also it's what happens in our lungs. But it should be mentioned that if we want to perform this Ali exposure system is necessary. So here I would like to introduce a commonly used one system, which is called cloud exposure system. So there are three important parts of this cloud system: the aerosol generator, the exposure chamber, and also the temperature control. So during the cloud exposure, first we will transfer the inserts with cells in this each well, and then we need to add this particle suspension or chemical solutions into the aerosol generator. And then the aerosolization can happen. So a cloud of droplets containing the test substance will be deposited onto the cell surface for exposure. But I have to mention that not all of cells can survive under this air-liquid interface conditions. So first step before the Ali exposure, we need to do the cell selection and the optimization. And this is also my first work during my PhD. So after this cell selection and the optimization, we can use these selected cell models to do some Ali exposure to test the inhalation toxicity. For example, we can do the cell exposure to the particles or to some air pollutants. And in my PhD, I worked with the PM samples, ultrafine particles from the traffic emissions and also the aircraft emissions, as well as the air pollutants in the aircraft cabins. So my work is to test this inhalation toxicity of this kind of the substance using the early exposure. And also this early exposure, this early cell exposure can be also used for the chemical exposure. So here is an example about our current project. So our current project is about the inhalation toxicity of glycol ethers, which is widely used in consumer goods, especially the cleaning products. So we aim to test the inhalation toxicity of these two types of the glycol ethers using our early cloud system with our long cell models. So last but not the least, I would like to briefly talk about my future perspective. So in my future career, I would like to still stay in the academic research field. But in the coming future, I would like to expand my research field because, as you can see in our group have a different research topics. So I think it's good to benefit from this background. So this is my introduction, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ryan. Greatly appreciated. So we have questions from Anjali Verma, then Katyani Joshi, and then Shrishti Dwivedi. So I would like to start with Anjali Verma. Anjali Verma, kindly unmute yourself. Okay, Katyani, you go ahead and ask.
First of all, thank you, sir, for such an informative session. My name is Katyani Joshi, and I'm currently pursuing my master's in chemistry from ISABELLA THOBURN College. And my question to you is, can this technique be used to measure the extent of microplastics inhaled by human beings?
Yes, for sure. And I think this is also a project we did and also we will do in the future in our group. So it can be used for the microplastic exposure with the long cell models for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now, Shrishti, you can go ahead and ask.
Yes, sir. Very good afternoon, sir. Srishti this side. I'm from Department of Chemistry, ISABELLA THOBURN College, and I'm finally a master's student. So my question is that I was working in a project related to atmospheric emissions and its impact on fetuses and different age ranges. And I came across a lot of queries related to that topic. And the main problem was it was related to the identification of the emissions and its effect on human proteins. So, I mean, sir, can you suggest me, is there any permanent damage to the proteins by air pollutants, or is this acute or chronic damage only? Long-term exposure to the air pollutants.
So you mean the proteins about this?
Sir, yes, sir. If there's any protein, and if considering a ligand structure, suppose the pH, if that attached to the active site. And we know that the binding is usually temporary. So can the protein structure be destroyed, or any deformity will cause inside our body?
So, okay, thanks for your question. And I think when we talk about, for example, the pH in the pollutants, we will first concentrate, think about the AHR family, which is for the mechanism of the pH, and also for sure that this pH and also some other, for example, the mental pollutants can also induce ROS release from the cells. So you can also focus on this type of the proteins, as well as some proteins about the inflammatory response. So
okay,
this is a real.
Yeah. So is this so there's?
If you want to know the modeling technique, how to find out the percentage, so you have
damage,
to
yes, sir.
it. So Luan, she wants to know, is there any model, to find out how much percentage of protein of lungs, or the age group is being affected? If you are trying to, I think so, you are getting our question. Are you able to understand?
Sorry, because I didn't hear you clearly.
That she is trying to tell, like, to find out the percentage of damage.
Oh, okay.
Is
The
a
percentage
particular
of damage.
protein. Is there any modeling by which you can find out that?
Yes, sir. Yes.
You mean that the modeling is about the cell model, right?
Yes, yes.
The computational methods related to bioinformatics or any method. So with the docking tool, we can identify that it is binding or not. But apart from that, is there any computational tool to study the conformational changes, percentage damage, or its protein activity?
Yes. So far, I can't think like there's like this kind of the cell models which is for this kind of the topics, but for sure that I can check with you also afterwards if you can send you the email, because I really didn't hear clearly. Sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. Shrishti, you can email Ruan, like afterwards, and try to find out like what if how he can help. Thank you, Ruan. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you
so much, sir, for consideration.
Sakshi, you have a question. So quick question by Sakshi. Yes, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, myself Sakshi Gupta, and I'm pursuing my PhD from ISABELLA THOBURN College. My question is, what is the scope in abroad after doing PhD? Means what skills should we learn during our PhD? And if we switch our research area for pursuing our postdoc, how is it easy or difficult? Can you give some brief idea about?
Okay. According to my experience, I think the most important thing during your PhD is you need to have an idea about your like research, for example, the perspectives or research plan. You can come up with some good ideas, and for sure that it's also better to have more academic publications, which can prove like you are a good researcher.
Thank you.
Maybe I can briefly add, I think it's important that you develop project management skills, because a PhD is your project. You are finally responsible for it. So you need to know, I need, for instance, 3 publications, I need some ETCS points, I need a soft skill course. So it is you have to show that you can plan and execute experiments independently to come to this goal. I think this is very important. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Like, thank you, Ruan. Thank you, Professor Barbara. Thank you, Vidya. And thank you, Sandeep. Thank you so much for delivering your talks, giving us precious time. Greatly appreciated. So now, like, we will move to our next speaker, who is from Manchester University, University of Manchester. So I would like to Saima to kindly introduce him.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to introduce and welcome our next speaker, Dr. Ashok Kirti. Dr. Ashok Kirti is a Ramsay Memorial and Presidential Fellow in the Department of Chemistry at the University of Manchester, UK. His research group is exploring the chemistry of nanographenes with pre-pitch edge structures and molecular transport in atomic scale capillaries. He obtained his PhD in organic materials from National University of Singapore and was a postdoctoral fellow at Max Planck Institute for Polymer Research, Mainz. He was a research associate with Professor Sir Andre Geim, who at the National Graphene Institute, the University of Manchester. He has 30 peer-reviewed publications in internationally leading journals, and out of which 5 are published in Nature and 2 in Science journals. His achievements are recognized by the award of Researcher of the Year and Presidential Fellowship from the University of Manchester, Ramsay Memorial Fellowship from Ramsay Memorial Fellowship Trust, India's DST Inspire Faculty Fellowship, Young Scientist, and Max Planck Postdoctoral Fellowship from the Max Planck Institute. We extend a warm welcome to you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Saima, for the introduction, and thank you, Alfred. Hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, yes. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, just trying to recover from the flu. Hopefully it should be fine. Let me share my screen and then we will start from there. Okay, great. Hope you can see this. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I was informed by Alfred that it's going to be a bit of not too much scientific, but inspiration type thing. So I'm not going to talk too much of technical details, but yeah, there will be some terms coming in between. Please don't worry if you are not very familiar with that. Should be fine. I will make it as simple as possible. Okay, so today talk I will be talking about 2D capillaries and graphene nanoribbons, but the overall concept is how one can synthetically engineer such molecular architectures. Okay, I'm talking about the molecular architectures. It's below 1 nanometers in a scale, if you know the scale parameters. Okay, so I think fairly my introduction is already done, but I just like to give a very brief overview that where I come from. So I basically from a Warangal district in Telangana state and in India. I studied up to BSc there. Hopefully I don't know anybody heard of this university name, but Kakatiya University. So I had my master's degree from University of Hyderabad. And then so PhD from Singapore, and I was briefly stayed in Germany for 3 years in Max Planck Institute, and now in Manchester. Okay, that's the journey. Great. I'll skip this. Okay, let's talk about these atomic capillaries. Okay, before we go into briefly, into this topic, capillaries are everywhere, which plays a very, very significant role from nature to the human body. So if you look at in the in everyday uses, we use a lot of pipes and which transports water, gas, everything to our homes. And in trees, if you see the capillaries are the main source for the trees to take water from its roots to the to its leaves, branches. And in the human body, again, those are the micro capillaries that plays a lot of role. Okay, so let's talk about the dimension scale. Okay, in an artificial world, if you wanted to make a capillary or pores, given the dimensions and then the precision one can have, how much precision one can have, how can he push a limit of these dimensions to in a molecular scale. If you see the y-axis here, we are talking about the nanometers and above to a micrometers. If you see a regular, normal polyimide membranes or even the PET or plastic bags that we have, if we look under the high resolution microscopes, you would see these microstructures. And if you see these carbon nanotubes, probably you might have heard, yeah. So these are like one-dimensional tube structures. And if you look at these, dimension-wise, if you want to characterize these membranes are three-dimensional porous structures, yeah. And there also can be made these two-dimensional capillaries in this way. And it's a different kind of materials exist. What all I would like to say is even one can punch pores into these nanomembranes, making zero-dimensional pores. So if you look at the dimension scale and the precision scale, the x-axis here, above 1 nanometer one can achieve, and depending on the system, one can have a control up to a nanometer size. But below that, it is not possible artificially if you want to make. It's challenging. It's not possible. It's not a correct word. It's challenging, yeah, to reach to the precision as well as below 1 nanometer. But that below 1 nanometer we usually call atomic scale or molecular scale. Right, but what exists in the nature, nature already is mastered everything. So we all get inspired by the nature. So it already has something which is on truly atomic scale. That's protein channels, which can only have a pore size in between, and which only allow one water molecule at a time. For example, like this. If you imagine a cell membranes, they can only at a time allow only water molecules to go in and out of the cell wall, but not anything else from the inside and outside of the cell. Okay, so these are like aquaporin water channels or protein channels in cells. Right. So the inspiration of this is topic is how can we make artificial capillary or pores that we have a purely have a fully control on the dimension, okay, and use them for the molecular sieving. But my research in the both topics that I'm going to talk is purely and fundamental, but the overall inspiration comes from something that already there. Right. So how many of, I think I'm sure most of you already know what is graphene and graphite. Okay, graphite is a two-dimensional crystal which has like graphene stacked in a two-dimensional way, and probably most of you might have already know how graphene was discovered in 2004 in Manchester. That's why Manchester is also called Graphene City. So they use sellotape, normal sellotape. Yeah, so you use normal sellotape and press onto the graphite crystal and peel it off, and the tape already has took off one graphene sheet out of these all the layers. Okay, so how do? They press the tape on top of the crystal and then peel it off. Yeah, so this is done, and this was awarded in a Nobel Prize in 2010 for this discovery of showing two-dimensional property, two-dimensional material, and then opening a two-dimensional materials field and enormous things, science out there. Okay, but my interest is, can we take one layer from middle of the crystal and make a void in the crystal? Okay, so if we take out one layer out of the middle of the crystal, you are creating a tunnel that is like just one plane is missing in the whole crystal, and you're having a capillary that's in the two-dimension, a void, and it's purely the graphene is atomically smooth, so you're creating a very precise void in the crystal, and that can act as an artificial capillary. Okay, so how do we do that? Yes, we can remove the layer from the middle of the crystal, and then you can see the evidence here. So if we cross section after making such architecture capillary, and then you cross section and see under the high resolution microscope, this is called transmission electron microscopy technique that can visualize the thing. So you see the horizontal lines are each plane, each graphene layer, and if you see this dark area where the layers are missing, and where these edges, if you focus on the edge of such thing here, so you could see the two layers are terminating here and leaving a 2-layer height void in the crystal. So that is precisely the height of that void is 6.8 angstroms. Okay, it's angstroms, right? But how do we remove such? How do we remove a layer from the middle of the crystal? Okay, we can't take a forceps or something that atomically thin, and then you just go and pick up a few layers from the middle of the crystal. It's not possible. Okay, so there is a way to build such things, is a bottom-up approach. Okay, bottom-up approach is, so you take units or some if you already know what is Lego, how kids play with these Lego units and build different architectures. Okay, imagine these Lego units are each atomic layers of 2D materials, and then you stack them, and in the middle you create some void, and then on top of that you again stack a few more Lego units. The similar way we take a 2D layer crystal of few layers thick and placed onto one substrate, and on top of that another 2D material layer. It could be a monolayer graphene, a bilayer graphene, a few layers thick graphene, and then that was pre-patterned, so it can be made into a strips and then placed on top of the bottom crystal and place another top crystal on top of it. Okay, and then you already created this 2D void very precisely, and the height of that is defined by the spacer here. Okay, but you might wonder, so you are placing these layers together, and what is the glue that is going to hold this structure all together intact? Okay, so you might have studied the van der Waals forces. Okay, so the van der Waals forces are the one which are acting as a glue here and holding all these crystal layers intact together and keeping this void open and not allowing these crystals to sag in and closing everything. It is possible to sag this top crystal, but if you have a defined thickness of the top crystal, which is mechanically robust, which is not going to collapse, that will keep the 2D capillary open. Okay, it is not only graphene. There are after the graphene, there are many 2D materials discovered or even figured out, and those all can be used in this technology. So one want to make a 2D capillary, they can use any 2D material, anything that can be peeled into a layers. Right. So the previous example that we have seen was graphite layers, and there's also another 2D material called molybdenum disulfide that can also be used for in this example. Here again, a single layer of a molybdenum disulfide layer was used, and you see the void, which is only again one layer missing in the crystal, and keeping that capillary open. Okay, so in this way, by choosing a desired spacer crystal here, we can tune the height of these capillaries. We can make a different height capillaries, and also, I mean, this can be made so that we have seen from the images. So, but to make a device to do something, I mean, to transport something through these capillaries, we need to have a device structure where one can really measure. Okay, so how do we make such devices? So the technology, I'm just giving this very brief so that you will appreciate how one can use a technology as well as a science to make such things. Okay, so we take a substrate which is having pre-drilled hole in it, and place a 2D crystal on top of it, and remove that material on top of the hole from etching the material from the backside. Okay, so that can only selectively etch away these 2D materials from the back. So you create the same impression of the substrate onto the bottom crystal, and you place a spacer crystal which is pre-patterned, lithographically patterned. Okay, lithography is a technique where you can pattern materials. Okay, so that was pre-patterned and made a channel in it. Yeah, and you place on top of the holes under the optical microscope. So mechanically, you just place it. And again, same technique, etch from the backside, so that you create the same hole, bottom hole into the spacer crystal as well, so that nothing stays on the hole. So this channel is directly connected into the hole. Now we close this capillary channel from the top and also hole, so that you created now a capillary which is starting from here and ending into the hole, the other side of the chip. Okay, so if you see physically how it looked like in the centimeter scale, this is like 1.5 centimeter silicon chip. In the middle you have this hole, and on top of that we stacked the 2D materials and made this capillary. So in the schematic it looks like this. Okay, you have a substrate and the bottom crystal, spacer crystal, which has a channel, and then top crystal, and the capillary starts from here and ends here, and it ends other side of the chip. So that now you have a out of plane entry exit capillary device which can readily be used onto any mass spectroscopy, any you transport anything through this gas or whatever, and then you detect from the other side of it. Okay, so this is how it looked like. So what we did with this angstrom scale capillaries, so made of a different 2D materials. For example, you see here in one such example, we have studied a gas transport through these capillaries, and we find out that graphene surface capillary has a atomically smooth, very smooth walls. Okay, so that gives to the gas which flows through it without any friction. It just like ballistic transport. It just without any feeling any friction, it goes very quickly. But if you use a different kind of 2D material which has a surface roughness, it has its own roughness because of the crystal the basal plane crystal structure. Yeah, so the molybdenum disulfide has its own bumpy type of surface, though it is atomically smooth, but it has its own corrugations. So that gives to a very frictionless to the the gas which goes through it. We have also studied water transport through this, where again it gives a very high water flow through this. So it's same simple experiment again. So we use a small water container and close with this device on the silicon chip, and then only water has passage possible. It has to escape from these capillary. Okay, we can quantify that water as well, how much is going out, and then is how it looks like. So if we calculate the speed of the water, it's very, very high. We can also push ions again, the aqueous ions, salt solutions. We can push through these capillaries and generate some voltage. And by applying again some external potential, we could even, change the current which goes through. It's like a transistor type. It's like, you can modulate that the current that goes through it. Right. What else can go? So gas, water, and ions can go through this, tiny capillaries. What else can go? Even polymers can go through this. Polymer, in the sense here, I'm showing an example, is a DNA. Okay, DNA is can consider as a polymer. So the DNA can even push through these capillaries and can be, really quantified. How is it going inside? This is again for a fundamental purpose at the moment, not an application. So how the polymers behave in this confined environment is the aim of this study. Okay, I'll just show you a schematic video so that you will appreciate how the DNA can go through these tiny 2D capillaries. So if you see here, so when DNA is like, it can form knots and other kind of, polymer architectures or even foldings. Those all can be detected when it is going. So while it is going inside the capillary, it blocks the electrolyte flow. And that blockage is the one we can, record it. And with that, we can compute back and see how structurally it is going. Does it have any folds, or, is it going as a linearly stretching, or it's going as a double strain? Everything can be seen with the minute changes in the current that we record from the background. Okay, right. So now I'll switch back to the bit of chemistry side of the graphene. And so topic is graphene nanoribbons. As you read from the name itself, it's nanoribbons. So that's like you take a graphene sheet, cut it into a nanometer wide strips. Yeah, so they are already, you made the graphene nanoribbons. So how you cut the graphene nanoribbon, how you end up the terminals, it defines its property. But the big question is why we have to cut it. Okay, so maybe if you already know, the graphene is a conducting material. It doesn't have a band gap. If you want to use graphene as a semiconductor, or in a transistor device or switch type devices, it should have a band gap where you can switch on and switch off. As such, graphene can be always on. You cannot switch off because it doesn't have a band gap. But when you make a narrow strips, you open the band gap. Okay, and that band gap will be tuned by how your edge structure is. And apart from the only band gap, there are other amazing properties that these edges bring into the to the applications, or maybe even at least fundamental aspect to study. Yeah, so that's the interest. But how do we make such? Okay, so this is again introduction. So why do they need? So for example, if you look at this architecture, this is called armchair edge structure. Okay, so these are semiconducting. Definitely they have a defined band gap. But when you make these edges are zigzag type, They are very, very different. They behave very differently. They are almost conducting all the time. But apart from that, they have these special effect called edge localization. Okay, so this. So if you look at, I mean, if you go back to your fundamental chemistry, organic chemistry, or aromatic properties, if you see anything which has more benzene rings have more stability. So if you take one repeating unit of it and then try to make more rings, and then you left off with 2 unpaired electrons. So if you keep writing those resonance structures, and you always end up these unpaired electrons on the edges. Okay, so if you overlap all of these resonance structures, you always have these edges are localized with unpaired electrons. Okay, so these unpaired electrons sitting on the edges will give the magnetic effects to these ribbons. So they become magnetic, and also they become of metallicity. It's like a spin type. Only particular type of spin can conduct through these ribbons. Okay, so these are all properties can be brought into the graphene ribbons, how you design such materials. Okay, so they can also be made only part of it.
इससे पहले के सारे छोड़ दें.
Sorry,
excuse me, sir.
For me.
Please, no, sir. No, sir. Please continue.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's move on. How do we make such ribbons? So if you remember in the previous slide, there was technique I was talking about the lithography. Okay, lithographically patterned. One can pattern these and make some nanometers type ribbons. That is called top-down method. So you take a graphene sheet and you cut it down to a nanometer size by ribbons. Okay, so that's like patterning and make ribbons. So one can make ribbons there. And also you can open carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes with different diameters can be taken, and then they can be chemically opened into, when you open it, it forms a ribbon. But if you see what will happen when you open the air, cut the graphene into a ribbon, you're breaking the bonds, and you don't have a control on even the direction of the bond, how you're going to cut. Okay, so sometimes you end up this armchair structure, or maybe a different structure. You don't have that precision in lithography because it's a bit still, nanometer wide ribbons, but you don't have atomic precision. And once you break the bond there, you don't know what is sitting on that broken bond. It can be oxygen, or it can be acid group, or carbonyl, hydroxy. It doesn't know. And if it depends on what group is sitting, and that influences property of this material. So you can broadly have some kind of property, but you don't really control it. Even when you open the carbon nanotubes, you can again get the ribbons of certain nanometer wide, but you don't have a control on the edge exactly. So no precision on the edge orientation and random chemicalization, which are the issues in this way. Okay, this is a top-down method. So there is a method bottom up. One can make these ribbons from the bottom up, like you take a benzene rings and fuse them together, okay, ring by ring, and then by fusing that, you can really define what is sitting on the edges. Okay, in this synthetic method chemistry, so I used very simple chemicals, like some phenylene or very simple molecules, and then you make a polymer out of again, known chemistry if you're interested. So this is like Diels-Alder reaction using only one reactant, and which has diene-dienophile, and which forms the polymer, this polyphenylene polymer. And finally, what you do is you're just fusing all the neighboring phenylenes and make a ribbon. And again, the advantage is from the bottom-up approach. You can design your precursor, which way you can attach a different functional molecules, and depending on which are required for your particular application. So we can attach fluorophores, or some kind of anchoring groups that can interact with your substrate. I mean, different. I mean, this is a protocol that I'm showing. So there are plenty of possibilities that you can make a ribbon which is stable, which can be, you can synthesize in a gram scale, and you could see they can be dispersed in normal organic solvents. And again, they are dispersed, I mean to say they are not very soluble because of their macrostructures and the rigidity. they can be dispersed. So once you filter, and depending on that, you can have a different colors and particle sizes inside, right? So what we can get from it, so you can make a ribbon, you can fine tune the property, and you can, depending on the anchoring moiety on the ribbon, you can again fine tune the chemical, physical, and electronic properties. And also, okay, this is a bit for how we characterize the polymer. I mean, how do we say how many we attach? But I think probably this is a bit more into the technicality. I'll skip this. But what else we can see, depending on how you attach, I mean, what kind of unit you attach on the terminal, there is supramolecular properties, like let's say when you put it on the surface, how they self-assemble, how they pack is going to, it will depend on what you have attached. For example, you only have alkyl chains in the A is going to be, again, this is alkyl chain, yeah, dodecyl alkyl chains. If you attach only them, they're packing very closely, and then you can see these ribbons, individual ribbons. But when we increase to a bulky atoms, like something like molecule, like, perlin monoimide molecules, they form a different supramolecular property. Their self-assembly is changed. You could even see a very independent single ribbons, or even in a particular rectangular shape self-assembly. So one can even influence their self-assembly as supramolecular properties as well. As I said in the initially, so these zigzag edges again, yeah, this is another extension. I mean, after that I'll going to stop. So these zigzag edges, as I said, they are going to be magnetic. But with the zigzag edge chemistry, these are not stable, because, as is briefly seen there, they are radical, because they're unpaired electrons sitting on these edges, so they're more reactive. Okay, one cannot synthesize from the bottom of approaches such material in an atmosphere. Okay, in a regular chemistry lab that we usually think of. Yeah, so because of their reactivity. So how do we then characterize such magnetic property of these ribbons? Okay. So we have designed such thing, make very stable graphene ribbons, and using that anchoring group, we can attach external radical, organic radical again. Okay, so you introduce a lone paired, unpaired electron radical there, and that unpaired electrons are again injected, because they are conjugated through bond connected to these conjugated backbone. So those unpaired electrons are injected into the ribbon, and those can be giving rise to this localization on these zigzag which is bolded. Okay? So that can be is another indirect method to reach out to the magnetic properties of such ribbons. Okay, so yeah, this is we have proved in collaboration with Oxford Group. So I'm not going to talk about more details of how we do the magnetic characterization, but the idea I would like to give is, because where you have connected these ribbons, and the distance between those ribbons, you can physically calculate the coupling constants, the spin-spin interactions, and that you can again go back and measure experimentally and validate. So that much precision you have. So once you have a precision on your molecular structure, where what is sitting on where it is sitting, you can, it's easy in theory, and in your calculation you can easily calculate, and you can go back and cross check. Okay, right, so there is no ambiguity in doing that. You can also make such ribbons of different edge structures again on the surface as well. So previously that we have seen is a solution chemistry, where you can put A and B into a flask and then cook. So here we make such small molecules and put them onto a surfaces, metal surfaces, in a high vacuum systems, where which are some unstable materials, or maybe some chemistry can be also done on surfaces. You sublime such material and then make a polymer on top of the surface, and then again heating the substrate, then you end up such kind of ribbons, and can be visualized in this case with the techniques called like probe based technique, where you can go and even see each phenyl rings in a structure. Okay. So with this, I will stop and thank you everyone. And we are very new research group, just started this year, and here are my people. And thank you for your attention. And it's all about the interdisciplinary of the science. It's not purely chemistry, physics, maths at a level. It's mostly like interdisciplinary. That's what you could see as science going further. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Very
you.
sincere. Very sincere thanks to you, sir, for such an explanatory and informative session. We got to know so much of inside chemistry about capillaries, nanoribbons, and its designing. We highly appreciate your valuable time. It was indeed our pleasure listening to you and your ideas. Now the floor is open for question answer session. Participants can raise their hands in the chat box. The first question is from Reham Fahim. Please, Reham, go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for such an informative session. I am Reham Fahim from pursuing MSc Chemistry from Isabella Thoburn College. And my question is, sir, what should be the maximum number of layers in a multi-layer graphene nanoribbon to conduct current? So as you told about those layers, so what should be the maximum number or the minimum number of layers?
Yeah, the minimum is monolayer, so even monolayer ribbons conduct.
Thank you, sir.
The next question is from Dr. Sonika Bhatia. Ma'am, please go ahead. Ma'am, we can proceed with the question with Dr. Imran Khan. Sir, please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
A wonderful and quantum amount of work you did. Ashok, sir, my question to you is, in last your slide, you talked about the chiral graphene. If the structure is 2D, then how you were able to synthesize or to form 3D type of model? First question. And in your initial slides, you talked about the making voids to increase the band gap. In your initial slides, you were talking about there is no band gap. While making voids, there is a band gap, so electromagnetic properties changes. So in that sequence, you were trying to synthesize clathrate type of graphene, or some other thing you were trying to synthesize?
Okay, so I'm not sure about the second question that you asked, but the first question is when we are synthesizing these graphene ribbons on the surface, on the metal surfaces, they are still passive one-dimensional ribbons. They're not two-dimensional any further, because they're still few nanometer or less than 1 nanometer wide ribbons. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies the question there, but could you please repeat the second question? I didn't understand that.
In your initial slide, you talked about we create voids in the graphene model. So it changes the whole electromagnetic properties of particular model. If there is no band gap, that means there is no electric property you were talking about. But creating voids changes the electromagnetic property. So does these type of graphenes may be useful tool as clathrates in some asymmetric synthesis?
Okay, I got it. Yes. Okay, let me quickly share that screen and then we go from there. Okay, hopefully you could see this. I believe you were talking about this one. Yeah. So when you cut a graphene into a ribbon shapes, so that definitely changes all its properties, electronic property especially. So it opens a band gap, and also it brings a different aspects of the graphene, expected properties in the graphene. So you create a void in the sense, I mean, is that the right? I mean, I'm just confused. When you say void, the 2D capillary, I call it a void, and in the graphene, when you cut it into ribbons, it's also still void, and sometimes even you can make pores in the graphene that also, you know, changes its electronic property.
Okay, Dr. Imran, can you hear?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I got the point. I was talking, does these graphenes model may be useful tool for asymmetric synthesis? Because you talked about there is unpaired electron and the conducting properties are there. So,
right. Okay. So the catalysis of these, yes, there is a potential, but I don't have an examples to give you. But yes, as a catalytic systems, they can be used. Yes, there's a huge potential for these materials to be used in catalysis as well.
Thank you. So next question.
We have a third question for you, sir, from Dr. Sonika Bhatia. Ma'am, please go ahead.
A very intriguing lecture indeed, Dr. Kirti. Sir, I just wanted to know that I was interested in the fact that with the sellotape, you can take out layers from a graphite crystal and make graphene. So when we take out those layers, the graphene layers, mono layers, do they break, or we are able to extract the layers from the sellotape?
Yes, we are able to extract. Maybe I can quickly show that how that process happens. So probably, okay. So if you see it here, so this is how we usually prepare when you extract with the tape, and that tape is now pressed onto a silicon wafer substrate.
Okay.
So when you press it, then the the layers which are already on the tape will be transferred onto the substrate. And then you again peel off the tape, and then some of the layers will stick to the substrate. And from there, that you can see under the microscope, they can be like few different layers, because there is no, it's not always you end up with only monolayer graphene. There can be bilayer, tri-layers on the substrate, which are like patches left here and there. So you see under the microscope, whichever is your interest, even a monolayer, you can even make these monolayers few tens of microns in size. So they can be again picked up. Yeah, they were mostly good in, I mean, how to say, when you say, you know, they will be tear off, or those, some places may happen, but mostly you could see them intact. Yes, they can be again, yeah, they can again, you know, used. I mean, you can put a polymer support on top of and remove it from there and put it onto the another substrate, or you can bring another material and peel it on top of it, or maybe drop it on top of it, and you make these artificial crystals called hetero structures.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Yeah. So we have a question from our keynote speaker too. Ma'am Rodhan, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for the nice presentation and the great results. I have a completely different question. So you showed also the different places where you have been and the different positions. So what was the most difficult part during your academic career? I assume you also had some frustrations. So you applied, you were rejected. How did you overcome this?
Thank you. That was a very kind you asked this. Yes, so everything comes as a package. So whenever we talk about the result and positive side, but every day in the lab, so there will be, yeah, for weeks probably there is no result as failure, and the same applies to every career stage. From master's to PhD, we apply many places, and yeah, most of the time we don't get any responses, and sometimes some people kindly reply saying no position available. So these are all very common. So you keep trying, and maybe there will be a door waiting for you to, you know, so open. So these are all happened to me as well in each career stage, from PhD, postdoc, and, you know, finding a faculty position. So it's very common. It's very common there. Yeah. So there.
How did you succeed at the end? Did you have some personal contacts, or you just tried and then finally you were successful?
Okay, so maybe I'll share a personal experience. So for example, when I about to finish my PhD, I have let's say, want to do a postdoc. Okay, so I applied probably 100, more than 100 people asking for a postdoc. So nobody has, I mean, I didn't get any positive replies at that time. So that was frustrating. You're about to finish and you don't want to take, take a break in your career, and it's like, verge. It's just a few months in hand and there is no positive side, other side, and where to go. Yeah, those kind of situations come, but again, you just keep trying, don't lose a hope. That is the one. I was trying, and then the last minute was the one I didn't even expect an email saying it's direct, my offer letter has come in the email, not even anything. Because we never know sometimes, it's not always it's an interview or something that you probably already had an interaction with the people that previously, and they already have you in the mind, and then when an opportunity come, instead of that they know that you're still waiting there, so they can directly give you. And that happened to me. So that's, I would say, I'm very lucky. Just a few days before my finishing my PhD, I received an offer letter from Class Mullen. Okay, why don't you come and join my lab? That was a email. So that was, yeah, no interview. But we had previous discussions with him whenever we meet in the conferences, and so we express interest, and knows the research area. So that's how you network with people. You never know when will be helpful to you. So keep talking, keep asking, keep express your interest. That's how it goes. So yeah, so that's one personal experience. But there are, again, each stage, there is something like that. But there is nothing that which simply as luck. I mean, it is always, I would say, luck, but your effort will be like, you already did your effort, you put your effort, you contacted people, you are in touch, you make an effort, and your CV is good and you are suitable for them. Sometimes, you ask people, but maybe you may not be, fitting to their research area. Maybe, their skills they are looking for is different from what you have. It is not a negative way that if you don't get a reply from them, or if they say no, doesn't mean that it doesn't fit to their project at that moment. That's
Ashok, you are very young, and you have succeeded a lot, and publishing in Nature and Science, and that too 5 and 2 papers, that is really commendable. You have done a great job, and you have a very bright future, I can assure you. Thank you so much. And it was same for me also, because I did my PhD from a regional institute in India, and then I applied for more than 200 different positions for postdocs. And then I got through at Purdue University, USA. So you have to keep on trying until you get something, and to attend the conferences, and then you get a exposure. That is wonderful. So thank you. So thank you for your valuable time. And if there are any other questions, Priya Tripathi.
Good evening, sir.
Hi.
Sir. Good evening, sir. This is Priya Tripathi, sir. I'm pursuing a master's in biotechnology from Isabella College. Sir, first of all, thank you so very much, sir, for the informative PPT and for sharing your experiences that are literally they are very motivating. So my question is that we have studied that graphene is a conductor, but once it's started, it can't be switched off. And the next question is, sir, we have studied that graphene is highly reactive with oxygen and heat together. So then why are we using, sir, in solar cells? Sir, is it in a good way or in a negative way, sir?
Okay, let me clarify, Priya. That's good that you know about the graphene. But graphene is not reactive to the oxygen and thermal, so it's very, very stable material. So that's why people can use in any different environments, and yeah, it's very stable. So, and chemically as well as thermally, it won't react with oxygen. So yeah, so it can be used as electrode in conducting material in any organic electronic solar cells, any place wherever it is applicable. Yeah, and it's also transparent. If monolayer graphene, bilayer graphene, they're almost more than 95% transparent. So it can be used in even
sir, yes, sir. And sir, in many of the books, it's written that graphene, once it's started, it can't be switched off. So
Yes.
what does that mean?
That means it's a conducting material. It doesn't have a zero band. It doesn't have a band gap. It's just zero band gap, and it's like a metal. So it will be just, if you contact it, and it will be, whatever the potential you apply, it's still conducting. It still shows. If it is a semiconductor, semiconductors are on off, depending on the potential you apply and how much gate you say. So that you might use it as a switch.
So,
okay. So
thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashok, once again. And so kind of you for giving your precious time. And you, as you are an Indian, whenever you come to, India and come to this part of India, northern part, please do visit us. It will be an honor. And I was to learn a lot from you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Barbara, for your valuable question. Thank you. And now I will let Ikhlaq Beg to proceed for the further.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So the end part of the conference, that is the valedictory session. So a very good evening and a warm welcome to all of you to this valedictory session of the 3-day online international conference on applied chemistry, exploring futuristic application for sustainable development 2021, organized by ISABELLA THOBURN College with IQAC, and this conference was sponsored by CFC Bank, Reliance Digital Limited, and Cappuccino Blast. Over the last 3 days, we have had deep insight into the several issues for sustainable development discussed by various dignitaries, faculty, and the students from across the globe. During the inauguration, our principal, Dr. B. Prakash, and also the conference chair, Dr. Alfred Lawrence, mentioned that the purpose of this conference was to motivate the young women toward the research. So, I hope and believe that we all have learned so many things from various eminent speakers, dignitaries in all these 3 days. For the first time, our master students also submitted the research papers in the journals for the publication. So now let us take a look at the glimpses for the last 3 days.
Shaista,
Thank you, Saista, for the glimpses. Moving further, now let us begin the award ceremony. I request all the participants who presented their papers and submitted the papers in the journals.
Sir, please invite Principal Ma'am also, na?
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, she, yeah.
I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm on board.
Okay, ma'am. Can we proceed, sir? Yes, sir. Now, I would like to invite our principal, Dr. B. Prakash, to preside over the award ceremony and say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkwell. I'm very happy that this 3-day conference on applied chemistry went so well. And there was a huge exposure to scientists and the research work that they are doing for our students and for everyone who joined. And it was a very energizing and wonderful experience, I'm sure, for all the students and all the participants. And as we come to the end of this conference, I would like to place on record my grateful thanks to all our chief guests, to all our keynote speakers, scientists and specialists in their own field who have joined from different parts of the world. I'm extremely grateful and thankful to each one of you for sparing your valuable time and joining us on this online conference, even though you are in different time zones, and I can understand how inconvenient it must have been for you. But I'm so grateful. On behalf of Isabella THOBURN College, I express my grateful thanks to each and every one of you for taking time out and educating and exposing our students to all the research work that you are doing in your own field. And I'm sure that all of us have greatly benefited from what you have shown us, your findings, your research, and the collaborations that you are doing. And I'm also grateful to you for offering any kind of help that our students needed. So I'm truly at THOBURN College. I want to express my thanks to all our keynote speakers and panelists. I also want to thank all the students who participated and read papers in the conference. And I'm sure that it has given you a lot of boost and confidence in order to be able to write a research paper and present it in an international conference. And also the faculty of different institutions who have presented papers. Thank you so much for being part of this being a success. I'm especially grateful to IQAC for taking the initiative to organize this conference, particularly to empower women for research. And I think that you have achieved your purpose to a large extent by involving so many women in this conference. So thank you, Dr. Lawrence, and your entire team for working so hard for so long behind the scenes. It is the work behind the scenes that is so important, and that shows shows itself in front. Also, thank you, Dr. Seema Joshi and the entire Department of Chemistry. Without collaborating with you, we could not have brought this conference to take place. So Dr. Seema Joshi, thank you for all your input, students, for putting all the faculty together. This conference has been a very big milestone in the Department of Chemistry. And all of you, the entire department, faculty as well as students, deserve to be congratulated. So once again, thank you so much for bringing everyone on board, bringing me on board, and my best wishes to all of you. And I hope that you go from strength to strength. And this is somewhere in the middle. We have come thus far, and we need to go further. So I'm sure that you will continue to do the good work that you have begun in the department. My congratulations. Please convey my congratulations to all the students in the department. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Greatly appreciated. Thank you. And now, Ikhlaq, sir, please, tell the results of
Yes.
best papers and best presentations.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am. We always receive your guidance and support with us. Now, with your permission, ma'am, I would like to announce the results for the paper presentation. The first paper presentation was selected by Saima Arif, Ayushi, and Nikita Tiwari from Department of Chemistry, University of Lucknow.
These are the best papers, not presentations. These are best papers.
Yes, sir, papers. Yes. The second best paper goes to Yasha Fatima, Mahima Solomon, Tanvi Lal, and another Akriti Abraham, Alina Bano, and Muskan. The third position goes to Neha Agarwal and her team. Congratulations to the winners. Now I'm going to announce the oral presentation. Delivered. First position got by Nitya Dubey and Akriti Abraham. Nitya Dubey from IIT Kanpur, Akriti Abraham, Isabella Thoburn College. The second position goes to the Benisha Robert from Isabella Thoburn College, and the third position goes to Rafat Khan. Congratulations to all the winners, and congratulations to all who participated in the oral presentation and submitted their papers.
And
now
the presentation, this, prize will be a coupon from Reliance Digital and Reliance Trends, in fact, and you will get a coupon from Cappuccino Blast, where you can go and have your lunch or dinner. So you can collect these next week. Probably this will be available by Monday afternoon. So you can collect your prizes, along with the certificate on Monday. Thank you. Go ahead, Ikhlaq, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. Sonika Rajan ma'am to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ikhlaq. Good evening, everyone. We have come to the last and an integral part of any event, that is the formal vote of thanks. This international conference cannot be completed without expressing gratitude and heartfelt thanks to our guest speakers, participants, college administration, and organizing committee. On behalf of IQAC and Department of Chemistry of Isabella Thoburn College, I am grateful to our distinguished speakers for the day, Professor Barbara Rothen-Rutschauser and Dr. Ashok Kirti, for taking time out of their busy schedule to enlighten us with their knowledge and expertise. Thanks are due to our student experts, Dr. Sandeep Keshavan, Dr. Bedia Begum, and Dr. Ruwen Hay, for sharing their research work with us. My deep gratitude is due to Dr. E.S. Charles, President, Isabella Thoburn College, for her support and blessings. Dr. Vinita Prakash, Principal, Isabella Thoburn College, is the true inspiration behind this conference. Her guidance and continuous support made this three-day conference possible. Dr. Prakash, please accept our heartfelt gratitude. It is time to acknowledge and be thankful to our event sponsors, HDFC Bank, Reliance Industries, Reliance Digital Limited, and Cappuccino Blast. Thank you for sponsoring our program. In the end, I wish to thank all the participants for their overwhelming response. I hope you all have been benefited by it. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Professor and Dr. Sonika Rajan. It was great. Thank you so much. So Prajanansh Mishra, you have a query? You have raised your hand. Anyways, that must be by mistake. And everyone will be getting their e-certificates. Everybody will be getting their e-certificates by next week, mid of next week, probably by Wednesday. So please wait patiently, and it will be emailed to you. And if you don't receive by Friday, then you can email us or you can WhatsApp it. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.